You can put plans in place for the type of life you would like to lead, but things don't always go according to plan. The same applies to a professional rugby career, and someone who is familiar with this is former Ireland international James Downey. James, thank you for joining us here at the Rugby Business Network to chat a bit about your playing career as well as about your life since hanging up those boots.
Cheers, great to be here.
Well, James, in 2016, your 13-year career as a professional came to an end after you decided it was time to call it a day. Being away from the rugby field during this first year now, how have you been handling it, and what do you find you're missing the most?
It has been a bit of a roller coaster, kind of 12, 13 months since I finished, and I guess didn't really think about it too much about missing pre-season. I enjoyed missing pre-season last year, but this year now I had a bit more of a sit back and think, and people were back into it and getting used to having a certain amount of time off and not having your months off, and to be honest, having such a structured lifestyle that you lead. It's been quite frustrating, you know. As I say, an awful lot of things are done for you when you're playing sport, and look, I'm still involved in certain aspects of things, and I'm still kind of keeping myself playing a bit and coaching as well, which always helps with that transition of not completely ripping the bandage off per se. I don't think I could give up that camaraderie, and I miss that togetherness that you have when you go through such a long, arduous season of working hard together, and just really enjoyed all that. So for me to be able to just finish that was quite difficult in terms of I couldn't just completely stop it. But I certainly don't miss pre-seasons, and I certainly don't miss being injured, and these are some of the pitfalls that go along with professional rugby. But I was lucky enough to be able to finish on my terms as such, you know, and injury didn't curtail my career too much. So I was actually quite very lucky to finish on my own terms.
That's always the best way to end off a career. During your career, you played for 7 different clubs in Ireland, Italy, England and Scotland. Now, there are 2 types of paths to follow as a professional player, I guess. Either you play for 1 or 2 clubs maybe throughout your career, or like yourself, you move around and get the adventure of experiencing many different clubs. Was this the plan to become a journeyman when you set out on your professional career in 2003?
No, certainly not. I think it's one of those things have a way of happening, and people have a way of turning up and influencing your life, be it positively or negatively, and it's just how you react to these arduous roads along the way. And I don't think you see certain amounts of players now and they have one club for their whole career, and that's my hat's off to them. But unfortunately, for me, that's not always the way. I guess when I started in Leinster, there was a certain Brian O'Driscoll and Gordon Darcy there who were just starting their careers in the centre. So from my point of view, I had to move if I wanted to play, because ultimately, from my perspective, you wanted to play and you wanted to do your job, and that was not being a professional trainer. That was actually out in the field, and I did have to leave to get opportunities. Different along the way. Then Connacht was frustrating as well for me. I enjoyed a great couple of years there, but ultimately, again, I wanted to win games, and Italy I was injured, I suppose, then the end of Connacht, and then Italy brought along that different outlook on life, and I really found the love of the game again there, you know. Hadn't been injured, and then I was lucky enough to get to Northampton for 5 years, and I loved it there, and I stayed there, and I could have stayed there as well, but I think that ambition to play for my country was too great, and the lure of coming back to Munster sufficed to bring me back, and ultimately proved correct. And I think from there then it's a bit of a roller coaster in terms of you're up and down. You have your positives, you have your negatives, and I felt then that everything, I had a plan in place. People have plans, and especially in business and in life, people have plans, but sometimes these things don't go according to plan, and sometimes you move clubs and you change clubs, but not always your decision.
Well, you mentioned some of the clubs there you played for: Leicester, Northampton Saints, Glasgow Warriors, 2 separate spells at Munster, and then ending off at Wasps. Which one would you say stands out the most for you, and for what reason?
I think from an Irish perspective, it would have to be Munster. Just the camaraderie, the whole people behind it. It's like people say it's got a special place, but it really does, and it's all consuming down there, and everything just worked for me there. I really enjoyed my couple of years there, and look, ultimately I would have loved to have stayed there a bit longer, but it is what it is. But I loved it down there. That's that, as I say, that uniqueness of that place, and people say that, and players from other, like when I was at Northampton, that was another club. I had an amazing 5 years there. I really loved it. But when you go there, when you go to Thomond Park and play in front of those crowds, are really special nights. in these European games, and it's just a special club.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Munster being the highlight, because during your second time around there, you were told by the coach in a rather cruel manner over the phone at the beginning of 2014 that it would be your last season at the club. How did you view that situation, and were you at all worried that it would be the last season of your career?
Look, there's no ideal way. In hindsight, there's no ideal way to tell someone that your contract wasn't going to be renewed, and it happens an awful lot. And I guess I'd been kind of lucky enough that previously I'd been very comfortable in how things were going, and I think ultimately at the start of my career, to have those questions and to have these conversations previously kind of made me a little bit wiser in how to deal with it. Very frustrating. Was very unsure where to go from there. To be honest, as I say, I had a plan in place, and I wanted to do another couple of years there and ultimately finish then on my terms, and that really threw a spanner in the works in terms of what I was looking at, and kind of really threw me off kilter a bit, and I hadn't planned for it, and it was just a bit of a scramble.
Interesting. Well, apart from your lengthy career, James, you managed to earn one cap for Ireland when you ran out onto the field in Toronto against Canada in 2013. Were you surprised by this call-up, considering it came so late into your career? And do you have any regrets that you never got more opportunities to play for the national team?
No regrets about not playing anymore. I knew the decision I made when I moved to England that I was going to be on the outskirts in the periphery of the Irish squad. So this wasn't in any way or means something new to me. I'd been involved in some of the Churchill Cup, and to be honest, and there's such quality players ahead of you, as I said, as Darcy and Brian and other sorts. It is what it is, and sometimes you just have these legends of the game that are ahead of you, and such is the way of the world. But no, I was absolutely delighted. Like, one of my main reasons for moving home, or my main reason for moving home, was to try and play for Ireland, to ultimately go back, play with a successful Munster side, and force my way into the Irish reckoning, which I was lucky enough to have done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, James, since November of last year, you have been working as the account executive at leading enterprise application software company SAP Hybris, based in London. What exactly does your job entail, and how have the first 9 months been?
First 9 months have been very interesting to get used to sitting at a desk and not running around and having long days and talking tech. It was very challenging at the start. The small things that you take into consideration of focusing for such a long period of time during the day and looking at screens, and to have to use your brain a hell of a lot more than when you're playing sport. But my job would be, I work in the wholesale professional services side of selling Hybris, which would be your internet, commerce, marketing, sales and service of the business. And as I say, SAP have been around for a long time. So software sales, I think an awful lot of rugby players finish up and not go into medical sales or software sales. And it's just a great camaraderie here at SAP, and everyone's striving. And it was ultimately, I'd love to go down a financial route previously, and just to have a step back. And I worked a little bit, as I said, in London doing that, and then ultimately this opportunity came up back home. So it was great to be able to do that. But also, as I say, that transition, a seamless transition that we all strive for coming out of rugby, was instrumental in doing that, and ultimately been sold to me by the bund managers here.
That's wonderful. With that said, were you always interested in pursuing a career in sales and finance after retiring as a professional rugby player? And when did you start preparing for this part of business?
Well, this area now, in tech, no, I'd never looked at coming into it. If you'd asked me 3 months before I started working here, I was very much focused on working in investments and banks in the city in London, and it just didn't click for me. And I just have to I think it's when you come to the end of your career and you have to know what to do, and everyone talks about it. Players come back, and I'm doing it now, and you go back, and when you're younger and you think you're unbreakable and unbeatable at 23, and someone says, look, your career's going to come to an end, and you have to plan and have a bit of foresight into what you want to do. You don't think about that. You don't listen. One or two players will, who are extremely driven and know what they want and are very focused. I think I came to about 28, 29 maybe, and I saw one or two players I played with been forced to retire, and I said, look, you kind of have to get your act together a little bit here and force things through. And went back to university, and while I was still playing, and you have the time. This is when you have the time to be able to do these sorts of things. And to be honest, rugby can open up an awful lot of doors as well, and you have an awful lot of talent and skills to bring to companies. So I think that while you're playing, use your contacts that you have, and ultimately when you finish playing as well, you've got to use contacts, because it's a huge contact world out there.
Well, speaking about putting preparations in place, while you were playing at Glasgow, you worked in the commercial department on your day off. What sort of insight and preparation did this give you for a post-rugby career in business?
Yeah, I think it was extremely helpful, and everyone up in Glasgow was great to me there, and just to be able to see a business, or to see the rugby club from the business point of view, put a different hat on it for me, and was able to see how things work behind the scenes. I think you see there's an awful lot of other players who go into sort of the commercial area. You've got, say, Doug Howlett, the ex-All Black at Munster, commercial manager now in Munster, and Gavin Duffy's now commercial manager over in Connacht. So again, it's your contact base. I think when you're working in that commercial aspect of things, you use all your contacts that you have, and you pick up the business now, but ultimately knowing the game, learning about the business, and it's interesting, and it makes it a hell of a lot easier when you're interested in what you're actually doing.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned it a bit earlier, and just to elaborate on it, in the months leading up to your retirement, how would you describe your transition from a lengthy rugby career into the business environment where you were about to take your very first steps?
I think, well, obviously, with a bit of help from you guys and Colin Hannon and then with the Rugby Business Network, there was and the Players Association, they do set up an awful lot of meetings, and when you're younger, again, you mightn't be inclined to actually go to some of these, but the older you get, and I think you have a bit more focus, and to be able to have these meetings is unbelievable, and it gives you those contacts. But even to have those conversations, it's about opening up the conversations that the RBN gives you the opportunity to do. When you go along to these meetings and you chat to people and you pick up business cards and you follow up the odd time, these small little things are the little nuggets that can bear fruit further on down the line. And it's an essential service, I think, that they provide, and it's an essential service as well. Because ultimately, a lot of players don't plan and don't consider and don't use these things, while people like yourselves at the RBN are there to facilitate those introductions and get those conversations going.
Well, speaking about the Rugby Business Network, it leads in perfectly to my next question, and it's a simple one. How did you come across the RBN, and what are your thoughts on the organisation?
I came across them when I was in Northampton, I think, and it was through the Players Association in the UK, and one or two players had spoken about it, and then there's a guy, Tomas O'Leary, who was over in London Irish and used to put up posts at the time, because he was involved in the business network with another fellow Irish man, Colin Hannon, as well. So I think a bit of word of mouth, and obviously at that time it was very prevalent in the press about the players retiring and not having a plan in place, and kind of, obviously depression's a huge thing nowadays, and people not having that plan, it can ultimately force or push and accelerate that pain that people are feeling. And to be fair to me now, I think that the RBN were very good in facilitating and helping, and the meetings are superb for me to get in front of these people. And these are people who obviously want to be involved at rugby, have a high interest, and players don't think about it that much, but you need the company to pull together the resources they have to actually bring all these leaders of business together, who are there to try and help, and be it mentoring, whatever way, be it a day a week or day off a week while you're playing. It gives you invaluable training while you're there, and it's an essential, a hugely essential need for players.
Absolutely. Well, finally, James, you are part of the 100 World Legends charity project. Tell us why you felt the need to get involved, and what are you looking forward to the most during your time while you give back to the less fortunate communities around the world, which this amazing organisation does, among other charitable initiatives.
So if you can make the smallest bit of difference across the board to anywhere, and look, you're giving back to kids, aren't you? And you're trying to help these kids, and bring smiles to their faces, which is only good, and to be able to do it with some of the legends of the game just makes it that little bit sweeter. But also, I think bigger or on a larger scale, it also helps with that transition as well of finishing playing, and people can bounce ideas off each other while enjoying a bit of sport as well and giving back to the game you love. But ultimately, it's about giving back to these kids and wherever David sees fit to push us. And this year there's Dubai, then you have Thailand and Laos, hopefully, and maybe Japan then as well. So look, it's a vast region to cover, and we've got some great names behind it.
Many great former players like yourself are involved indeed. Well, James, like your rugby career, the Rugby Business Network hopes your journey in business is also long and adventurous. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Cheers, thanks.